You have lost things you thought would last forever. People, versions of yourself. A feeling you were certain you could hold on to. And somewhere beneath the grief of each loss is a question that nobody asks out loud. Why does it hurt so much when everything was always going to end? The Buddha spent his entire life sitting with that question, not to find a way around the pain, but to understand it well enough to be free inside it. At the center of Buddhist teaching is a single word, anicca, impermanence. Everything that arises passes. Everything that begins ends. Every form that exists is already in the process of dissolving. This is not a philosophy of despair. It is, if you can sit with it long enough, one of the most liberating truths ever taught. Today we explore 5 teachings the Buddhist tradition offers on impermanence. Not as consolation, as a different way of seeing. Teaching 1. Everything is already changing. The Buddha described reality as a river, not a photograph, a river. Every moment of experience is already moving. The sensation you are having right now is not the same sensation you were having a second ago. The body you are sitting in is not the same body it was 7 years ago. The self you think of as permanent is, on closer inspection, a stream. Shunryu Suzuki, the Zen teacher who brought Buddhism to America, wrote, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. The beginner sees the river moving. The expert is certain they already know what the river is. Most of us live as though there is a pause button, as though the person we love will always be reachable, as though there is time to say what needs to be said, as though the morning we are in right now will wait for us. The first teaching is simply this: nothing is waiting. The stream is always moving, and the most awake response to that is not grief, it is attention. Teaching 2. Clinging is the wound, not the loss itself. The Buddha identified the source of human suffering with surgical precision. He did not say that loss causes suffering. He said that clinging causes suffering. The difference is everything. A flower blooms. It is beautiful. It begins to wilt. This is simply what flowers do. But if you grip the stem and demand that it remain in bloom, you crush the very thing you loved, and you hurt your hand. Pema Chödrön calls it the fundamental ambiguity of being human. We are creatures who love, and love by its nature attaches. We are creatures who must lose, and loss by its nature undoes us. The practice is not to stop loving. It is to love with open hands. The grief that hollows you is not caused by the thing ending. It is caused by the part of you that had already decided it would not. That refusal, that demand that this particular thing must stay, is where the suffering lives. This is not coldness. It is not detachment in the sense of not caring. It is the practice of caring fully while holding lightly, of being completely present to something without demanding that it be permanent. Teaching 3. Endings carry beauty that beginnings cannot. Japanese culture has a word for it: mono no aware. the bittersweet awareness of impermanence, the particular ache and beauty that comes from knowing something will not last. The reason a sunset moves you is precisely because it ends. If the sky stayed orange forever, you would stop looking up. The reason a song can break you open is because its final note is already approaching. It is the approaching end that makes the present unbearable and beautiful at once. Thich Nhat Hanh wrote, "Thanks to impermanence, everything is possible. A dead flower could not bloom again if flowers were permanent. A suffering person could not be transformed if they were permanent. Impermanence is not the enemy of beauty, it is its condition. The people who seem most at peace with loss are not those who have stopped feeling. They are those who have learned to let the feeling move through them rather than lodging it somewhere it cannot go. They grieve, and then slowly, without forcing something in them, opens again. Teaching 4. You are not who you were." Perhaps the most radical of the Buddhist teachings on impermanence is this: not only do things change, you change. What you call the self is not a fixed entity moving through time. It is a process, a flowing, a continuously arising and passing sequence of moments, thoughts, sensations, and choices. Ajahn Chah, the Thai forest monk, told his students, "If you let go a little, you will have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you will have a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you will have complete peace." What he was pointing to was the self's grip on its own story. The version of you that was humiliated in a meeting 3 years ago, that person does not still exist. You carry the memory. But the cells that held that shame have been replaced. The neural patterns have shifted. The story is real, but the person is gone. This is not a way to avoid accountability. It is a way to stop building a prison from the past. The self that did harm can change. The self that was harmed can heal. Neither outcome is possible if we insist that the self is fixed. The Buddhist tradition calls this anatman, not self, not the absence of a person, but the absence of a permanent, unchanging person. What you are is more like a flame than a stone, continuous, alive, and never quite the same from moment to moment. Teaching 5. Impermanence is not a problem to be solved. It is the door to being fully alive. Every tradition that has confronted mortality has arrived at the same conclusion, dressed differently. The Stoics said, "Meditate on death, and you will live more fully." The Zen masters said, "Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The difference is the attention brought to the chopping and the carrying." The Buddhist tradition offers a practice called maranasati, awareness of death, not as morbidity, as clarification. When you sit with the fact that this day is finite, something shifts in how you receive it. The meal tastes different when you remember it will not always be there. The face of someone you love looks different when you hold the knowledge of impermanence alongside the feeling of love, not with dread, with presence. Thich Nhat Hanh described this as interbeing. Nothing exists in isolation. The flower contains the rain, the sun, the soil, and the gardener's care. When you look deeply at any one thing, you find everything that made it possible. And when you understand that, the ending of any one thing is not only loss, it is a return. These 5 teachings are not meant to be understood once and filed away. They are meant to be returned to at the moments when life makes them necessary. When something ends that you did not want to end the first teaching, it was always moving. You were watching a river, not a stone. When the grief is so large, it feels like it will not pass the second teaching. Look for where you are gripping, not to stop caring. To stop demanding that reality be different from what it is. When the ending is already here and there is nothing left to do the third teaching, let it be beautiful precisely because it ends. The last light is still light. When you are ashamed of who you were, the fourth teaching, that person is already gone. You are the one who remembers them, not the one who still is them. And when you simply forget to be here, the fifth teaching, impermanence is the only invitation you have ever needed. This moment will not repeat, which means it is already, right now, worth your full attention. The Buddha did not teach impermanence to fill you with grief. He taught it because he had seen what happens to people who pretend it isn't true. The clinging, the exhaustion, the life spent preserving instead of living. And he had also seen what happens when someone stops pretending, the lightness, the quality of attention, the way ordinary moments become vivid simply because they are received fully without the demand that they be anything other than what they are. You cannot hold the river still, but you can learn to love the river as it is moving, changing, disappearing around each bend, and still, in every moment, completely here. If this reached you at the right moment, subscribe. New videos every week on the wisdom traditions, the inner life, and the ideas that help us live with our eyes open.